Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Ops Oops Origami.
I'm excited, Brian.
Yeah, I'm tingly. How about you? W2K.
I'm ecstatic for this.
Awesome. So today we're gonna talk about engineering yourself into a corner and basically all the related topics having to do with it. Maybe I can't promise we'll talk about all of the topics related to that, but that's kind of our jump off point.
Yeah.
We haven't had a show in 2 weeks, and we're on an unusual Monday slot. We were busy last weekend and the weekend before. Well, Monday and the Monday before, either with traveling or I was camping. Chris was on the road. So this is just how it worked out. So here we are.
Yeah. Here we are.
Welcome, Mike.
How you doing?
Good. Yourself?
Yeah, hanging in there. A little hot, but that's okay. Gonna play golf this weekend, and it's only Tuesday, and already looking forward to golf.
Oh, okay.
Good.
For all you boating folk, I don't see a lot of sunburn anymore.
Oh yeah, it's mostly peeled off. I was matching my shirt for a little while. So
Me too.
How's everybody been for the last 2 weeks?
Good.
Still hanging in there.
Anything new and exciting?
Nah.
First road trip with the family. That was fun.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep. Kids did well.
Good.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
might as well jump right into our topic. 'Cause
Absolutely.
I know it's one that gets me riled up.
So Brian posited a question to some of us a few weeks back. Or days or whatever it was. What do you do when you've MFA'd everything and something goes wrong? How do you get in? Can you get in? Like, what's your strategy?
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure most places don't have a strategy, or their strategy is hope everything fixes itself.
Yeah.
Which is not a good strategy. I mean, okay, you've MFA'd your access to your firewall. Now somebody committed a rule that broke internet access. Your MFA that was in the cloud doesn't work, and you can't get back into your firewall. That doesn't sound like a wise plan to me.
Yeah.
And that doesn't just go for firewalls, that goes for everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, it turns it from that into this, right? Can you take all your systems dark and bring them back up? What does it take to get there? And what have you done to yourself in your world?
Yeah. Did you outsmart yourself when you were engineering everything? You were so confident that it would never break that you put the only way to manage your VDI infrastructure running on a VDI.
Yeah.
Which is another thing I've seen. What happens when VDI is down?
Yeah.
Well, when you locked it down so that you can only manage it from that one VDI, guess what? You're having a bad day.
Yeah.
And the same thing can go for practically anything. I mean, there's engineering and then there's over engineering.
Mhm.
You can just keep working it until
Facebook.
Well, yeah, you think you're adding resiliency.
Right. Or adding security, right?
Or adding security, yes.
And the reality is that you've made it increasingly likely that something going wrong is going to go really, really wrong.
You can turn
Well-
what would have been a 5-minute outage into a 5-hour outage.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
nobody has the right console cable.
I was just gonna say that, right? Console. Okay.
Yeah. Do you
This
have
is-
a
this
back
is-
way in?
Yeah, this is like in case of emergency break glass kind of situation.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, hey,
Right.
there you go.
Yep.
That was not coordinated, by the way.
We actually almost like planned this episode out because all the discussions we've had about this.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and it's not just like your firewall requires you've MFA'd your access to your firewall, and your MFA is in the cloud, right? You can go halfway there, right? Like, okay, your firewall depends on an MFA system that's on-prem, back behind its protected perimeter, but that system has real tight coupling with something else out in the cloud, right? So instead of being completely down, you're just significantly degraded. It takes you, it definitely increases the amount of time it takes to recover, which is unfortunate.
Absolutely.
I think we've all been
And
through some of those things.
Oh yeah. And where they really hit hard is when it's the things that are never supposed to go down that go down. Like DNS is not available.
Come on.
Wait, I was doing everything like I was supposed to. I used FQDNs everywhere. Now DNS is down. And I can't get back up because I can't get into anything. Just simple like things like that. There's got to be some way for you to get in. Even if it's some not in your VM infrastructure bastion host that's your like secret way into your management network, your out of band network.
Yeah.
You got to have some way. Grant, secure that. Yeah. Wait, DNS can go wrong? Yeah, it can.
Hey, don't say.
Your enterprise CA cert somebody can forget to renew that damn thing.
Boom.
And everything goes sideways.
Yeah.
Depending
Who
on
here-
how strict you are, that could
Who
absolutely
here's
happen.
had a cert expire without them knowing it was
everybody.
going to expire?
Everybody.
Right?
has.
Like,
Oh yeah, especially a public-facing cert. Oh, it expired. Oh, big deal. I'll just renew it. Oh wait, I need to revalidate the domain. Oh, that's going to take 48 hours because I got the whiz bang. They call your CEO and need a DNA sample from him to actually validate it. I mean, yeah, you need to understand how these things work, what their failure modes are, and how to. Well, first off, if you don't understand that stuff, you're never going to be able to engineer it to withstand those things to begin with. But ideally, you'll make it so that even if all those things do fail and fail spectacularly, you still have a way to fix it.
right.
Because it's really easy to make it so that you can't fix it anymore.
Right. One of the things we talked about is making sure you've got a local auth option, right? And I can hear people screaming that like, but wait, local auth is so insecure. And on its surface, it is, right? So what do you got to do, right? Make sure it's local auth, only allowed from a specific host, or security enclave, batch and host, whatever that might be, right? And then you protect that.
You know who does that best is Cisco. If you set up, say, Radius, you can have it fail back to local. It'll never fail to local as long as Radius is up. So you can't use those local credentials unless Radius is down.
Right.
True.
I
And
mean,
even
why
then-
why isn't everything like that? I mean, at least in the networking space. I mean, there are other provider or other vendors that do stuff like that, but there's many that don't.
Right.
Where there isn't, you need to make sure that you provide similar functionality for yourself, even if it is the console cable. Okay, I'm local, then it'll let me in with a local credential. Like you're on the console port, then you can get in with a local credentials, because you really shouldn't leave that console port so that you can just hit en and you're in.
Yeah.
That's a bad idea too. But it's something. It's better than being completely locked out when things go sideways, because
Yeah.
eventually things are going to go sideways, especially when you don't plan for them to go sideways.
Yeah,
Make sure you're-
multi-tier connectivity with a console. We've done this before.
Mhm.
We'll put in something like I don't know, a cradle point, right? And it
Yep.
has you come in over the internet and you hit this brick, and then it has a different level of authentication. And then once you get past it, you have to know codes. You have to know how to use it, right? It's not just another hit 3, 2, 1, whatever. Now you're connected to the console port. Now you're logged in. No. It's a whole bunch of commands that you created. If you don't know the sequence, you can't get past it. Now you're past it. It's just little tricks and stuff. But now you're on the console port, so you can protect the console port in a lot of different ways with the right tool.
When you're doing that, you're effectively creating what is a complex or a different version of a password, right? A
Yeah.
sequence of events that give you access to something. Simplest version of that is typing a password into a keyboard. The more complex version is like get the commands right or don't get anywhere.
Right.
And yeah, those things can be fished, sure, but the more layers you put in front of that, the longer it takes, and you can always change them up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of the things that you mentioned, Brian, was the idea of like make sure all of your IT systems are as close to out of band as possible.
Yeah. That management plane, especially.
Sure.
I mean, be it networking stuff or compute or storage, get that stuff on a separate network that's as simple as plausible. Don't. There are things you can do that are fancy-ish. We had talked about like infrastructure as code, but make it resilient.
Right.
The needs for that kind of network are so much simpler than what they're going to be for your production traffic and your production workloads. Let it be simple.
Right.
And if you have the possibility, put it on separate switching that's dumb as shit if possible. Give yourself that way in that you can't break unless you try really, really hard.
Well, something that the only way to break it is to do so intentionally.
Well,
Right.
yeah, exactly. Because
Like-
you can always have an oops when especially if you're doing infrastructure as code. When you're automating everything, you can break stuff real fast, way faster than the speed of thought.
Right.
But if all your management is out of band, your mean time to repair is basically you run the next command that fixes it all again versus my session's all just timed out and now I don't know what to do. Now I need to figure out a back way into that and try and fix my mistake. Instead of 30 seconds worth of outage, now it's, well, I might as well use that 30 seconds to start open a new Word doc for your resume. Because
the famous resume generating event.
yeah, they're a real thing. As soon as you fix this, you're fired.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so I think the guideline there is like instead of thinking tightly coupled systems, as loosely coupled as possible while still achieving your security and your functionality, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not talking about abandoning security.
Oh,
We're talking
absolutely
about
not.
being intelligent about how you secure things and how you manage them. The beauty of a simple management network is it's actually relatively straightforward to secure. Like if you don't have a bunch of complexity, security becomes super clear.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I'd ask the question about, okay, how does microsegmentation play into this? What do you do in that scenario? And response like, you don't. Like you don't
Yeah. In your
microsegment your
management
management network.
plane, yeah. Except for like egress, where it like needs to go out to the internet for some reason, which ideally that's minimized. I don't think microsegmentation really has a place in your management plane. That is one of the micro segments, is that management plane. Whereas everything else, that's where you can get fancy. That's where you can do all the whiz bang stuff. But management, keep it simple, stupid. I don't know. Think of everything as like silos or pods instead of one big network. Or
Right.
think of it like you're the cloud provider, and each of these services you provide your customers, which is your internal users usually, are kind of keep those as pods. But where you operate as the provider, that's as far out of band as possible.
Yep.
And just completely segmented from all that stuff. That way nothing that takes place in those other environments can mess up your management access.
Right. Yeah, I mean, don't be Amazon, right? Like, don't let your uh, traffic overruns in your customer network take down your management network access. Okay,
Yeah.
why are you using your management network to as like backhaul and overflow?
Yeah,
That's
it's
a bad
Amazon.
idea.
Can't you afford a little bit extra dark fiber just for all your management backhaul? No, keep it separate. Yeah, QoS is awesome,
Yeah.
but a separate connection is better. Always will be.
Well, and it doesn't. If you're just talking about management, right? Management traffic is pretty resilient to delay. Like,
Yeah.
I want to send a command to a router. Okay. Like, you don't need it to be the snappiest thing. You don't need huge amounts of throughput. What I'm saying is, like, you can afford the connection. Like, go out to, Spectrum and buy a consumer grade connection for $50 a month. Like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure your marketing department, like, just uh, cut up $50 bills twice last week just because they can.
Yeah. Or get yourself a cradle point. I mean,
Yep.
that's not really suitable for Amazon, but all us mere mortals, get a cradle point or something similar with
Right.
cellular access.
And if you're Amazon, buy Spectrum
Yep.
as your backup.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, if you're worried about security, and you should be, from all the major providers, like say Verizon, you can have that SIM drop your connection directly into a private network
Yep.
that is only for you.
Right.
It's basically your private cellular network. Granted, you should still probably encrypt over that, but it is segmented traffic. If you're really that nervous about things, or if you're that worried about whatever, just traffic conditions on the internet. If you're using a single provider, especially if it's like a nationwide cellular carrier like Verizon, AT&T, they've got their own networks. It's a reasonable expectation that even if things are going wonky, their traffic on their network is still going to be just fine, or fine enough to do some management stuff.
Right. And it's secure, right?
Yeah.
This was one of the things that you popped off that um, The management layer is
yeah.
easiest to secure.
It absolutely is, because you know exactly who needs to access what, and generally when. I'm kind of against using time restrictions for like management access, because that's kind of stupid. Because you never know when things are going to break. It's great that your techs and engineers are 9 to 5, but you never know when things are going to break. But generally, it's not random people coming in over the internet to manage your stuff. If so, you completely missed the whole idea. But yeah, you know exactly who, generally coming from where, is going to be accessing what and how. Yeah,
Right.
so all the network engineers can SSH into all of the management IPs. Beyond that, manage that part with like ICE or whatever you're using for your authentication. Don't try and get too crazy with it at the network layer. But man, if you have offices that especially say you allow some remote management over the internet, well, you know what the public IPs of all your offices are. You can probably work out some dynamic DNS or something for your techs if they're working from home. This isn't an insurmountable problem. And when it comes to a break glass kind of situation, I'd rather them have access than not.
Right.
Forget the
Especially
DNS. I used to do, been in some places, financial places that were a little bit more strict.
Yeah.
It isn't about the DNS. You only got, say, 50, 60 sites, static IP, right? And you know the IP. Here's a distribution. You have the access to the distribution through an out of band. Here's an email. What's your private email? We mailed you this list. It's tied to nothing. It's like playing James Bond games. Here's a list of IP addresses. It doesn't say what they are. You just know what they are. And they're coded
because
by
they're the same at every site.
Yeah, right. and then that's it. It just sucks to be you. You build up your scripts on your machine, right? You're the support. There's only 6 engineers. You build your table privately, and this is how you move around. And you just happen to be in a situation. This is not how it is everywhere. You're on the hook for it, right? We called Mike because he's one of 5 guys that got the list. Guess what? I don't care if you're getting laid. Get out of bed, get up, and you got to get into this branch for us right now because it's no one can get in. We're down hard, and that just happens to be the nature of the beast, right? And you can't do that for bigger places, but there is a way. Like for Silgan, you can get away with it for Silgan. I shouldn't have said the name, but anyway, because there's a limited number of places, 150 at the most.
You can
right?
You can get away with it at a shockingly high level, right? I work for Honeywell. Full disclosure, I can imagine that you might need a list of 10 guys, 15 worldwide, that have those numbers. And you know what? It's in their paycheck that when when the phone rings, you answer.
Mm-hmm.
And you tell the pilot to land. Right?
Exactly.
I was about to jump out. Actually, I am jumping. I'll be to the ground quicker.
Yes. Well, and so Mike had mentioned locations. That's actually another good way to, if it works in your environment. If the WAN is up, but you can't get in from the outside, I go to my local location. I know I can go to switch port X. It will only work for an approved list of MAC addresses that my laptop happens to be on. I plug in, I can get to stuff.
Yeah.
And that takes some maintenance.
There's always creative ways to make it so that it's ways in that are securable or secured.
Right. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be complex. In fact, the more fancy it is, right.
Yeah. Yes. Fancy is not your friend when failure flies in. There could have been more F's in that sentence, but
I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Oh, I've got a few more F's I can add already, but
yes,
they're not family friendly.
they're not family friendly F's.
Right.
So forget it, you fools. Forget about it.
So let's break it down. What's easy? What isn't? Right? What are the easy things to tackle here? Cisco gear, and hopefully any other reasonable networking system vendor. I'm imagining Juniper is similar. I mean, HP's got to have something along the same line. Pick your top tier or mid tier networking vendors, or bottom tier, as the case may be, and they're going to be able to fall back. That's what we're going to do, Chimdale Lake, man.
You know,
I do
most
not know
equipment
who
these days have management boards put on for a reason, right? Remember when there wasn't any? You got a console, you got an auxiliary. Now there's a management interface. There's a reason for that, right? So you don't have
It
to
blows
give
my
it.
mind how many places aren't using the management port.
Yeah.
Or something similar. You know what? If you don't have a physical management port, you stand up another VRF and you dedicate a port to management and pull that off to the side. Be it always port 1, always port 48, whatever makes sense for you, that should be the thing. Make it out of band. If you just have like a management VLAN that's distributed on all your switches and that's how you hit everything with just like a VLAN interface, it's going to bite you in the ass at some point.
Yep. Yeah,
I mean, at that point, you're expecting the system that you designed to be up the way you designed it.
Yeah.
And you can't guarantee that.
All it takes is one dude to add a VLAN to a trunk the wrong way. Not use add.
Yeah.
BTP?
Yeah.
Shut it all down?
Well, shouldn't have VTP run anyways, but
Yeah.
switch port trunk allowed VLAN. Add. Don't just list some VLANs after that, because those are the only ones that are going to be allowed. Everybody has made that mistake at some point.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
If you've worked with a Cisco switch for more than a week, you've made that mistake.
Yeah.
But it's not obvious, and it's real easy to just accidentally just doing your thing. Oh, I forgot to just add one word.
Yeah.
Or if you're actually giving the whole list of VLANs intentionally for some reason, you forgot to add the management VLAN because it just fell out of your mind. You're thinking about all those production networks. Well, no, just keep it out of band. Okay, it switches at an IDF. Run another line. Why isn't there a separate line just for management?
Mm-hmm.
Or say you have a trunk going out there. Why you only have like the 2 you wanted for your port channel? Add an extra one. Yeah, span tree shuts it off. Who cares? Always give yourself an extra way in, especially internally.
I mean, that applies in any system. If you're going to build them for fault and resilience, you have to provide yourself an extra path. And I'm not this isn't a back door, right?
No.
This is a planned garage door. Most of the time you go through the front door, fine. But in a pinch, you open the garage door
on the side. Exactly.
Right. Like, know how you're going to get in when your normal path won't open. And make sure that they aren't coupled the same way. Like, hey, you know what? To come back to the MFA thing, make sure the MFA works a little different for your main door than your front door, right?
Yeah.
Don't screw yourself.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, speaking of doors, door access systems, card swipe systems. Most of them will do caching. So most of them will do caching either on a local server or the actual like boxes on the
Module,
doors
yeah.
will actually cache.
Yeah. Make sure
Most
those
of them
boxes
will-
have like battery backups too.
Well, and
The-
make sure if there's people that might need access when the building's figuratively burning down, have access before they're going to need it. So,
Right.
like, say your engineers or techs that might need to go on there because the networks are down. Well, now they can't get in because you can't update the card system because the network is down.
Right. Yeah.
I've
Give
been
them
in that
access.
situation.
From the
Or-
door key.
Give
Yeah.
them access to a card that has access.
Ask Facebook about this one.
Right.
How many hours were they down?
Yeah. Look at-
8 or
Because
10,
of
something like
basically everything we've mentioned so far that we said not to do. That's what they were doing.
that. Yeah.
And they had to use an angle grinder as a master key.
Is that what they did to finally get in there?
Basically, yeah, they had to cut down the door to get
Cut
in.
down the door. You think they could have paid a guy to sit in the data center like 24/7? Like
That costs money.
yeah.
You
And
think-
there happened to be nobody inside. They
Like
can
nobody.
actually open the door.
So, given the level of hubris that Facebook has shown, what do you want to bet that they haven't re-engineered anything, and what they're doing is they're paying somebody to sit in the data center 24/7?
Let's start with
Probably.
that.
Probably.
I would not
yeah.
bet against that.
Yeah.
Newly created Facebook position.
I'm
do you
surprised they
do for
don't
Meta?
have, normal, data center has staff 24/7 at it.
You'd
Right.
For
think.
what purpose? What would you need them for?
Yeah, it's all remotely monitored. It's all
Yeah, the
remotely
data
controlled.
center. Nobody's on the
We're not-
floor.
Yeah, if we're not racking and stacking, who cares?
I guess.
And it's not like they swap hard drives or anything. Like,
When I
oh,
worked-
that server died or that hard drive died.
Yeah.
Just decom the server and leave it in place. Oh, that rack power to that rack died. I just shut down that rack. There's a whole new pallet of them. Well, a whole new truck of them arriving tomorrow, anyways. Who cares?
Yeah.
Just let it die
Assuming
in
you
place.
can get the door open.
Yeah, assuming you can get the door open. Assuming it wasn't that server.
Right.
Speaking of that server, every organization, without exception, if you think you're an exception, you have 10 of them, not one of them. They have the one server that you can't touch.
Yeah.
Fix it.
Just one.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You have at least one. If you think you don't have any, you have at least 10.
Yeah.
If you're positive you don't have 10, you probably have 100. So there's always those gremlins, there's always those black holes that nobody has the balls to tread in. Why? Fix it. There's clearly a fucking problem. Oh, this server reboots and then Bob has to like do a thing.
Yes.
Okay, automate the
Love
thing.
it.
Don't no. Why is that a thing? Oh, we have a switch that sometimes goes a little weird. Well, replace it. What the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
That's gonna eat your
Yep.
face at some time. Don't let it. Oh, here.
Context.
We need two people, not just one. Yeah, one
Yeah.
to nudge the other person to wake them up.
Yeah.
Or they're probably on their phone, on the
Yeah.
toilet, on
Yeah.
Facebook.
Oh wait, Facebook's down. Better go open the door.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody's gonna be here in a few minutes.
No. So like my ideal for how to get this started is build yourself like a small self-sufficient security enclave. Build in some monitoring, build in really good auditing, and then put all your break glass stuff in there. Like, don't mess around. Put all your keys in there and just protect the hell out of it.
Yeah.
It's no different than like your MFA system. That thing's got all the keys too. You protect that. Protect this. Your management
And,
network's
and
actually more important.
and because of all the reasons we've mentioned, that should be the easiest thing to secure. Only known users are accessing it, and only accessing like specific things. That should be easy.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're going to build up a small security enclave like that, what do you put in it? What are the basics? What does something need? Like at its root, you could just have a firewall that and a couple of switches that don't need anything. You fire them up and they work, right? They have pre-configured with the right IP addresses and MAC addresses, and they'll talk to each other.
Yeah, at its very simplest, it would be something like a Cradle Point or an Open Gear or
Yeah, I was going to say remote access first.
yeah,
Into something. Yep.
some device. I've looked at so many of these devices. Nothing really has every feature I would like. I want to see a device that has serial ports. They can even be USB, but without. I don't want to have to use a bunch of hubs for like console access to network devices.
No.
But I also want enough switch ports to be able to put all the management ports into.
Right.
So that way you have basically all your bases covered.
I'm in a place now that does this. It's the Cradle Point. The Cradle Point has a USB interface that connects to a console management tool. It only has 4 ports
like
on
a
it.
terminal server. Yeah.
Right, and these 4 ports are directly connected. So you come to the Cradle Point, you get through your codes. You have console port 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those things connect to 4 switches, and these 4 switches aren't connected to anything but a private network of interfaces, which are management ports only. And that's exactly what it is, and it's a multiple tier, but it's single sign-on kind of sort of. It isn't not a single sign-on, but it's you log into one device and then you move to the next tier. You log into the next device, and now you're on this private network with the accessibilities to the management network with SSH. So now you're there's no GUIs, there's no special. It's just you're SSHing into the core, right to the core, just like you wanted to do. Via VPN that doesn't work. So.
Exactly, and in a properly designed. Once you're in there, you should be able to get pretty much anywhere.
Yeah.
Or make the changes you need to make to get pretty much anywhere. What I had started working on a while back for W2K's place is so it was a Raspberry Pi. Unfortunately, they only have one interface. I would have expanded them a little bit better, but basically, it stands up a VRF for multiple different networks, so you can plug into a couple of different. You can plug it into MPLS, plug it into the internet. You can plug it into a Cradle Point, and it'll build a tunnel over each one of those back to home base or multiple home bases, and then from there, you basically use that as a jump box, and then you just need something to use as a terminal server, or you just hang a bunch of USB console cables off the thing.
Yeah, just simplicity.
It gives you your back door and your management way to get into everything. But things just weren't working right. I didn't have time to really work on it. But man, if you could build all that into like a switch with enough USB ports and built-in cellular access that didn't cost an arm and a leg, that would be awesome. Making it a couple of different sizes.
Well, see, now we're talking.
Like even like small remote sites that maybe only have 3, 4, 5 pieces of network equipment. At least the 3, 4, 5 that you need to get to. At least be able to get to all that in one box.
Yeah, we're doing that right now in the place that I work. It's like there's a Cradle Point on the rack, or delivered, and it connects directly to these four-port console devices, and there's your 2 core and the next 2 axis, devices. Usually the sites are no bigger. I mean, these are just like your warehouses, like Jesse has, but they're branches, office branches with maybe 200 ports.
Yep.
So 150 ports. So you've got a couple 48 port switches in your core. And that's it. You hit this cradle point, you're backdoored in right away. And as long as the switches themselves didn't go down, again, everything's on battery. We got these things decked out. The site's always, accessible one way or the other, unless you lose power. And then the battery wears out because it's been down for 2 days.
But at that point, it's kind of out of your
Yeah,
hands.
there's another problem you don't have to worry about.
But that's that solution is so cheap in the grand scheme of things.
Yep.
If your office can't justify say $5,000 plus whatever the connectivity cost for that cell connection, maybe another $1,000 a year.
Yeah.
How does that site need to be open? You need to start asking different questions. Is it really that important?
Exactly.
Does it actually need to be up that bad?
Yeah.
Any site that actually needs to be up 24/7, why does it not have something like that already in place?
I mean, if you're talking about Cradle Point, you're talking about like $1,000 a year, right, for the connectivity.
Oh yeah, because you get a pool of hour or a pool of data.
Right.
It's really not that expensive.
So from a security standpoint, do you introduce something like a basic identity system, some kind of crude firewall, just to make the access control a little more robust?
Ideally, like even to get into the Cradle Point or wherever your hopping off point would be, because the Cradle Points can build a VPN. You have it build it to a couple of sites, including maybe a cloud provider you don't even use except for this.
Okay.
Or you have all your wherever your sites are where like engineering staff are at, have all of them added so that they can literally SSH right in if they need to. Like break the glass scenario, they can get in. At least enough to
Ours was set up with it's a public IP, you SSH to it, and your device is managed locally on this thing, and you're permitted to based on the fact of where you came from, right? So that's the first tier.
You've got a crude ACL that's limited to specific sites.
Yes, that's at 8 people or 7 people, and only you guys are, one of the apostles that are allowed in, and no one else can get into this brick. And that's it. And once you're there, nobody else can get there. So if you're the first one in, you're the first one in. The next person comes along, you have to grant them access. But they just can't steal it from you once you're in the battle.
Cradle Point's centralized management, they're like cloud management. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
Like say if you set up credentials on that, like local credentials, does that like push out to the device and that's basically standalone? So like say it doesn't have connectivity to the cloud for management. Can you still get into it?
You build it, you build a profile from the management tool, and then you
push it out.
You push it out and it's a standalone device. And even when it reboots, it holds that credential and it will call home to re-register, but it doesn't need to be registered for you to access it. Yeah, it's kind of slick. I like it. We got thousands of them basically. I mean, we just rolled out another 300 of them over the last 6 months, and it's like, golly, that's all I can say. It's like, wow.
So, are you guys doing some kind of internal auditing on it to make sure its config stays steady state? What are you using?
We have a bunch of different tools. I think I want to say it's OpsGenie is looking at it. We also have PRTG is another tool that they use. These probe these devices for configuration, logs, and functionality to make sure that it hasn't been modified or deviated away from with the templates that have been put on them. So
Right.
it's kind of slick
mean-
the way they do that, because then your knock just kind of looks for, as you probe the device, they look for not if it's doing what it's supposed to, it's looking for alerts that it's been doing something it shouldn't be doing. Like someone tried to make a config change, which you can't
Right.
do. You know, it's forbidden. There's a huge audit in front of it, and then there's kind of a check and balance. You log in, like I would log in and I want to make a change. You first have to fetch information from the portal. The portal has your credentials. It says, hey, Mike is trying to, request root access to the device in the config mode. It sends an email to somebody who then gets alerted that has to approve it. It's like, change control right on the fly, and then they deny. Usually you end up with an email, right? And what are you doing? With a phone call, what are you doing? Right? And if you don't answer the question right, it shuts down.
Yeah. It's like a PAM solution. I'm seeing that more and more often. Like admin on demand. But there's like an approval process or some other.
It's basically for the password too. You really can't log into it unless you've been approved. So when we bring them up and we go to test it, all right. So the device is in a mode. It's sitting in a profile somewhere, and they know you're bringing this thing up. So it's in a little flimsy. You can get in. Mike's going to be allowed to get in from this IP address with these credentials. So it's like a test password. It's not your own. It's a test password. So as long as you use the password, no figure the password, you get in, right? But then as you complete the testing and they pass it to the next phase, that level of access, that test password goes away and you no longer can use it. Now it's locked down to specifically the credentials that you have, right? You and 7 or 8 others have. And they're in a vault. There's a password vault. And they don't change often, but they can change when the intrusion has been detected. And they'll turn around, they'll change the password across the board. So you have to go to the vault to get the password. And then it has to be approved that you can actually use the password, right? And when they tag the device that you're coming in it with the password, you only got so much time to act. 15 minutes. If you don't act within 15 minutes, this thing shuts down. You got to start over.
So my question for you is, what happens if the stuff that approves those things, or the access to communicate that approval to the devices breaks down?
You dial the 1-800 help me, and there is like the authoritative. There's an authoritative service above that's not automated, that they also can come in via the 4G, 5G, whichever we're using, and they can directly access the device and permit.
Okay.
So there's an override to it.
So there is a break glass method that's relatively straightforward.
Right. Again, it goes down that path where you say, okay, so you don't have 10 minutes now to get in. You got 30 minutes before you get in, but you still get in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
It's about 3 hours of
you do have break
driving
glass,
there.
right? Yeah. So do you test it on a regular basis?
Yes.
And do you
Well,
redeploy?
we test it when we put it in, and then it kind of goes on its merry way. And then the knock on periodic intervals, I mean, there's hundreds of them. So they're on a list, and they just, every night they'll get a list of 10. And that's part of their nightly duties are to go and test these devices, then move on to whatever else they do. And slowly but surely, they will touch them all in a year's period of time. They're in some type of sequence, unless they get the alert that says, hey, something's going on with this one. Now you got to log in, and you got to go through the process to make sure, the vault has the right password. If the password gets authenticated, that you get the approval. They test the whole thing all the way through, and usually, like my boss, who has to approve for me to go through it, they ask me to do it. Hey, we can't get to this site. Go ahead and see it. The first thing I do is I try the out of band. Right? If I can't get in through the cradle point, then we initialize the back door. Right? And then they'll always say, Mike, that's not what we hired you for. Pass it over the knock. The knock gets the ticket, and then they do it, and now you walk away until someone says, hey, You know, we can't make this work. Go see what's going on. You know, it's interesting the whole way they do it.
Hmm.
But when that flag goes up, if there's a problem, people who engage. Everybody kind of runs from this, but I love diving into it. They run from it because you're being snooped. All of a sudden, you know, okay, who vaulted the password? Who's doing the approval? Mike is doing the work. You know, and all of a sudden, you're front and center, and the lights are shining on you, right? Because you're doing something you don't normally do.
I mean, yeah, there are a lot of people that run from that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
I'm with you, Mike. I'll dive in. I'd rather fix a
First,
problem. Like, I can answer questions all day. You want to know why I'm doing it? Because it needed to be done.
right?
Yeah.
Like, to the point, even like, oh well, you know, hand it off to the knock. Okay, you know, I've taught the knock to do this 6 times.
Right.
Why
Well,
didn't they just do it?
that's the question. Why don't you just let me do it? It came to me in the ticket. Well, you know, the knock does this regularly, daily, you know, and this one you just add it to their list. So it's just one more thing they got to do. Instead of doing
Right.
10, they're going to do 11. So unless there's really something going on, the site is down, you know, and then you need to do it. That's the whole thing, you know. I mean, in the thousands of sites that we have scattered all over the place, we get these alerts. You know, the knock has to prove these false positives. Well, the site's down because it failed 3 sets of consecutive pings, right? You know, then your ping test sucks. You have latency somewhere, or you know, it's down. It really is down. And then why didn't the redundant network kicks in? You know, you're running these SD-WAN, you've got 2 connections that are, you know, 100 meg or greater, and then you got LTE on the backside. Then you have the cradle point with the, you know, the 4th mechanism in that doesn't route traffic, it's just access. You know, if all that's falling apart, there's something going on.
I'm not going to lie. I've heard about failover networks my entire career.
Yeah.
And I'll also tell you that the reliability of failover networks has been well below 50% of when they're needed my entire career. Like, there's just stuff that
They need
happens.
to be they need to be designed correctly and
Yep.
tested regularly.
Yes.
That's the trick. They
You make a
have to be
change,
like
they should be tested.
a holy grail. Have more than one, right? And have your testing and failover sequence down to like sub-millisecond.
Yep.
So that
We
you
do some
can
cool
test
stuff.
during the day.
Yeah, we do cool stuff like that too because we're just rolling out a new SD-WAN solution. There's 200 megs, and then there's a 5G, and we fault it. We go right in there, the knock goes right in there, and they shut down those interfaces and force it to go down the other path. On some of the bigger sites, like in the DCs, it's not a failover. We use both circuits, and we push the traffic as needed. If one's, you know, kind of pipe is kind of full, we'll push the traffic the other way. We'll throttle it back and forth. We'll play along with it. But indeed, if the one goes down, the other one can handle the whole load. That's how they're designed, so they can handle the load. But on occasion, the knock will take these random sites. They do like 100 a week, and they run them through these failover scenarios. They'll just shut that port down and watch it all fall over. And then when it's not too busy, because they'll monitor it, they'll take the second circuit down and let it go over LTE. It's like, what are you doing? You know, everybody calls, oh, the site's running slow. And it's like, yes, of course.
But it's working, isn't it?
It's working.
Right.
Exactly as designed.
And they're so serious about that solution. They spent millions on it. They're not, the management's in play. They don't want to see this fault for years because it's all on them. You know, you spend millions of dollars to put this in place for what? Well, the sites are truly never down.
See, I like to see that. Because that reminds me of like the Netflix Chaos Monkey.
Yeah.
Right. That's exactly what it spoke to me, right? Like, no, don't pay attention to that it's slow. Pay attention to the fact that we intentionally broke it and it's still up.
Right.
Like, we broke it bad and it's still up.
Yes.
that means that when it breaks itself bad, it's still going to be up.
But we play games with it too. Like they'll be around the New York area, New Jersey, Eastern Coast. You can get away with breaking stuff. I mean, you can drop the first 100 meg is 38, 40 milliseconds. Verizon's right out that way anyway. The second site is 2-4 milliseconds difference. LTE is like 68, 70 milliseconds. It's like, what the hell? I've never seen LTE work like that before. Usually it's 100.5, 200, and dog slow, and something like that. You can actually run a site. We put up these trailers with these Carney kits, I call them, and they got a Cradle Point on there, or a Sierra. They'll do the Sierra, and they'll get a AT&T chip in there, and it runs somewhere between 68, 70 milliseconds. And we can run a trailer. That's what they're for, the trailers. A couple PCs, a couple phones, printer, credit card machine, and there's no issues. It just runs. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Right. So I think I got a summary. So I think this is how you get started, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, this is achievable. And it's achievable without too much time and without too much money.
Yeah.
So
It'll pay for itself the first time you use it.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yes.
And you're gonna the beauty is if you do it, you're gonna know it's there. You're gonna sleep better.
So you guys got coolers sitting on your desks, huh? So you don't have to run to them.
I'm all
Oh.
out. So
And the waitress isn't available.
no, she just got home. Oh.
So yeah.
Well, here, what were all the? Oh, here, I got your thing here. Oh, I can't see it without.
Brian and I are having a back end technical discussion instead of the scroll, the obnoxious to read scroll.
Yeah, it should be like a splash screen where we can actually talk about it,
or
even a slide, because you can do like presentations.
You can shrink the video. Yeah.
You can also do like they do in Zoom. You put the chat screen up, and then you can minimize it if you want it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. You know what? Let's chat this.
Yeah, do that.
While you're doing that, I'm reloading.
Nope.
Yeah, I need to reload too.
Don't break my
back.
Here we go.
You copy paste your heart out. Oh, that's better actually.
Ta-da! I mean, I could have formatted the heck out of that, but
that's fine.
So remote access, yeah. Aggregated private management network, yeah. Stack addresses.
I mean, it should go without saying.
Generally, I'm strongly of the opinion that your naming and numbering scheme should be ridiculously self-documenting and consistent. Whether you have 2 sites or 100 sites, you should be able to predict if you know like the base /16 of a site.
Yep.
Or however you're breaking it up.
Right.
You should be able to tell exactly what network, what VLAN, what IP address that a given device is on.
Yep.
At least for your infrastructure stuff. Or let's say a 50% chance of getting it on the first try.
Right. Absolutely.
Does that necessarily mean static? Well, sort of, kind of. Basic firewall ACL. I assume you mean for management network.
Yep. Like
Yep.
if you're going to put this basic, bastion segregated network in place, like
Yeah, if that's going to be your
you do
backdoor,
have
you have
to
to make
secure it.
sure that that's secure. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And then lock down the config. Don't let people modify it. Don't let make the malicious actor work hard so that you have time to catch it with 6.
Lock down the config, but also be diligent about keeping it up to date. If where you're coming from has changed, update those ACLs, those whatever, to
Right.
make sure that that is still allowed.
Right.
Preferably
where-
automate that process so you don't forget about anything.
Right. And that's where I come to, like, you want to audit the heck out of it. But number 7, the test and redeploy. Like, test it.
Oh yeah.
Redeploy it. Like, don't even bother updating config. Just change the config and redeploy.
Yeah.
Like, the whole thing gets updated daily.
Yeah. I like hearing about how much testing that Mike's stuff goes through.
But that is
'Cause that's-
amazing.
That's really what it should be. It should be continuously testing to make sure that there's nothing,
Right.
because otherwise, man, that stuff will bite you at the worst
If it
possible.
breaks, right,
When it
if
matters
breaks,
most.
you can't get there, and the site's making $1 million a day, and it's down.
Yeah.
Right? And it's really down. Okay, it isn't just someone sawed off the fiber up the street. Like you said, somebody fat fingered and pushed across the board the route, and it went away.
Yep.
It's up, but it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And not everybody has the disciplines. Like, this company's huge, and they put a lot of money into it because they're as big as they are. They can't afford these things to fall apart on them, so they put this process in place. And it didn't happen overnight. I mean, I've been there for a year, and it's an ongoing. It's strict, right? And
Yeah, they
it's a
probably
fixed-
learned some hard, painful, and expensive lessons along the way
Oh,
that
yeah.
led
Yeah.
them down this path.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Because that's what
Well,
it
and, like,
takes.
I'm not gonna lie. I hear about the knock doing, checking on 10 a day or whatever it is, right? And I think, wow, that could and should be automated. I'm not saying the intervention should be. Like, I think there's a limit in a scenario like this to how much you automate, but the knock shouldn't be testing. The system should.
Well,
And
I
it should
call
be
it the
throwing
knock.
red flags all over the place.
You
when
call it
something
a
goes wrong.
knock only because it's a manned infrastructure with a lot of flexibility. There's probably 20 people in this knock. It's not a 2-man show watching,
Sure.
open view on the screen. They sit in front of a lot of automated processes that do many things besides monitoring, and one of the things are to run these tests.
Okay.
All right. Be right back.
Yep. I changed my flow
I mean,
this way.
that's the way to roll, right? And I guess, yeah, they've got a lot of money, but it doesn't mean that the smaller shops can't do it.
Right. It's a model. It's basically what it is. And
Right.
you can actually template.
You can do
both
something.
sides.
You can do
Right.
something.
The worst thing you can do is nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think if the small shop looks at that and goes, yeah, I could never achieve that level of redundancy and sophistication and whatnot. Like, okay, fine, maybe you can't, but you know what? You can get somewhere. Like, invest in a cradle point, build an ACL into it. Teach the janitor that's got the keys to the building how to plug it in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
If it's protected and it lets you get a backup, so be it. And I guess, like, it's a good example of a larger picture, right? Like, you say, okay, well, that's the solution for remote access. But there are similar things you can do for issues that aren't like, well, I lost access to the site. Make sure you've always got access is the principle. And you can bust it down to some relatively simple building blocks to make sure that you've got access to your system so you can bring them back up. Don't get locked out of your own system. I think that's the moral of the story. If you're not positive, and by positive I mean if you haven't tested that you won't get locked out of your system, you know,
It's the
Just like
equivalent
a
of
work
lockdown.
locking your
together.
keys in your car, and should be
Yeah.
just as embarrassing, if not more so.
Yes.
Yeah.
My hope my brother's not watching.
Why? Does he like to lock his keys in his car?
Yeah, yeah.
In his youth, he may or may not have locked his keys in his car
We all have.
enough times for it to become a joke.
Well, maybe not that
Yeah,
bad.
you don't want to be that guy.
Yeah. To be clear, he has not done it in years and years and years.
Most modern cars make it nearly impossible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had a Dodge Dakota. You start the engine, right? And if you got out of the truck and closed the door, and you didn't get back in it within 5 minutes, the door's locked. I don't know if it was a bug or a
Yeah.
flaw, but it did it to me one time, and that was the end. That was it, the end. You know, the combination lockbox in the back of the truck with the second key in there. It's like, what are you doing locking my truck on while it's running? You know? Who was the genius that put that in there?
Oh, that's good
What are you
stuff.
doing getting out there running your truck?
My one different but related fault was early 90s Honda Civics. If you left the lights on and turned off the car, it would not turn off the lights. They'd just keep running and running and running. Whereas every other car manufacturer solved that problem early 80s. Like, oh, we'll just turn the lights off because the car's off. Yeah, not Hondas. Yeah, I did that twice. And what the problem was is I would leave for work while it was dark out, and I get there while it was light.
Uh-huh.
So you don't see the headlights anymore. So I'd turn the car off and go into work and then come out and dead battery. Only happened twice, but it was twice in like a week.
Yeah, new car.
Ooh. Yeah. But yeah, that's how you learn.
That is how you learn. Hey, I learned a fun lesson to not back when the ashtray became the change tray.
Yes.
Make sure you leave the lighter in the lighter port, because if a penny gets in there, some super interesting behaviors.
Yeah,
like the car runs just fine, and that circuit is able to handle a cigarette lighter.
Yeah,
like it's not going to
but
pop.
It'll kill the
that.
battery.
Oh yeah, it will. Your alternator is not able to keep up. I know. So does the maybe he doesn't know it, but so does the county sheriff that picked me up outside of Mayville at like 11 o'clock at night. Super awesome.
We have robots in the
Hey, you get to identify as whatever you want.
And Chris loves you because you identify as a robot.
That's right. That's right.
I couldn't even guess at who that might be. Might be a rando. Might be someone we know. Either way, that's interesting. Yeah.
It's a fun surprise, and maybe we'll find out someday.
I mean, that's not Benny, is it?
No, come on.
You're muted.
Benny was must have been the Silgan Containers Corporation name.
Yeah, I think he's been changing his.
Yeah.
Oops.
Oop.
Yeah, he's if that's him, that's one of the people I wanted on for tonight's show because his company is
Oh,
kind of engineering themselves into a corner.
Right. There's probably a reason for it too. I mean,
Oh God,
without saying it too loud, but them damn millennials, you know.
yeah. So everybody on this video right now is seeing that WAN diagram.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, is that what you
interesting.
call that? I mean, I
That's,
suppose it is technically it is a WAN diagram. I mean,
Yeah.
I view that as like
all the
spaghetti that
WAN.
turns into the steak that you jam into your heart.
Yeah, all the
But-
WAN.
Yeah, you know what's better is if we have all of it.
All of it.
We're gonna have all the WAN.
and their BGP configuration already bothered me, but I think they made it even worse. And then the fact that they think they're going to be better with like 2 different MPLS providers, multiple internet connections, the LTE, fucking managed VPN, SD-WAN, like slow your roll. Make one thing that works and is resilient. Don't try and do all of the things. You're just going to make a very fragile, hard to troubleshoot network that nobody understands how it
Right.
works or how it's supposed to work or what it will look like in any of the thousands of possible failure conditions that this thing is going to go through.
Yeah. There's going to be always something broke.
Probably.
Yeah.
There's always going to be something goofy rattling around in that network. It's just way overly complex. That is not a good WAN design. Simple is good. Resilient is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think that's either of those. Yeah. Fancy is not your friend when failure flies in.
You effing effer.
Here's one I had for you.
Faced with failure, fancy is not your friend. Friend. Oh, what is this? Antipan.
I didn't really spend
Just
too much
because I
time
like to
looking
make
at
it quiet while people
Benny's
read
diagram.
scrolls.
Everybody's trying to read it. It's kind of hard to read the scroll. It makes my eyes-
yeah, they're awful.
It's just too much.
Not a fan of the ticker.
Yeah.
Except for this one.
Yeah,
this was good.
Simple. Wait, DNS can go wrong?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those simple services that you just assume is always going to work, and it's phenomenally well designed. I mean, it's served us well for like 50 years now, and it probably will serve us for at least another 50 years.
Yeah, right. It does its job really well. Not particularly secure, but then again, does it need to be?
Well,
I mean,
it should be verifiable, which DNSSEC provides that. But because it's so damn reliable, everybody is like taken aback when resolution is not working the way they expect it to.
Right.
Or then you have people that just don't understand how it works and try and make it do goofy things.
Yeah. All right. So let's deal with something lighter.
Sure.
Elon, my brother.
Oh.
He likes robots too, from what I hear.
Yes.
What's that clown been up to?
I mean, he likes Twitter robots.
How's the Twitter thing going with him?
Backing out of it.
In litigation.
Yeah.
Litigation?
They have set a court date in Delaware for October.
Oop.
Mr. Musk would like to wait until February. He's probably not going to get his way.
I think he got denied on that, right?
I don't know.
Yeah. I think he got a week. He got a week. And I don't.
That's a generous judge.
I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the
Do you
ins and outs
play one
of
on
that.
TV?
Well, yeah.
I mean, in the internet is abuzz about him. So the U.S. is choosing not to extend copyright protections, or that's the buzz currently in Congress. The famous Mickey protection, right? And
/ Sonny Bono.
right, Mr. Musk tweeted something along the lines of "It's about time."
Yeah,
when
I
that was
agree with
mentioned.
that. I did not see that,
But the internet is abuzz that because he commented on Disney finally losing their copyright protections for intellectual property that is well over 70 years old.
Yeah.
and all stuff that they borrowed in the first place.
Right.
Yeah, from the Brothers
All that
Grimm.
older stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all the Brothers Grimm.
Yeah. But anyway, because he commented on it, the internet sphere tubes and pipes are talking about, well, is Elon going to buy Disney? So that's fun.
No, that wouldn't make sense.
No, it
Did
wouldn't.
anybody see, like, it was either yesterday or Friday. Elon's dad said he wasn't proud of him. He was actually more proud of the brother that we've never heard of.
That whole
Like,
family is weird.
So messed up.
It's
Too much.
so
His
messed
dad that has how many kids with stepdaughters?
stepdaughters and like,
Like, dude.
I mean, when you're given Woody Allen a run for his money on the creepy factor,
Yeah, and he looks like kind of a creep. Who is that German guy that kept girls locked up in his basement for like 40 years or what the fuck ever?
There's probably a lot of that. Yeah.
He kind of looks like that dude. I can't remember the guy's name now. But yeah, he basically had a dungeon where he kept women.
That's great.
And obviously
did things. Yeah.
he didn't just keep them down there, feed them a well-rounded diet, give them enriching materials to consume.
Yeah, try to give them a good life.
So I was kidnapped and kept in a pit and
Made
to better
salads
myself.
every day.
Yeah, my skin was so moisturized.
I was moisturized, I was well educated, and I was let out once I was in good shape.
And had my MBA.
It's torturous. All right. But seriously, it is not funny to keep... What was that?
Casper Hauser.
Casper Hauser.
Yeah. He was a German guy with a dungeon. He used to lock people up.
Yep.
PSA.
Bring up a picture of him and Elon Musk's dad. If I remember right, it's not like they're twins or anything, but it's like, they could be cousins.
He got that evil look,
Yeah,
Was
got the look.
that one of the guys that one of the girls was his daughter or something like that?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
But
well, on to other topics. Speaking of
Yes.
Europe, Broadcom.
Has anything happened on that front?
Europe is going to take its time. Broadcom
As
has
they
said that
do.
they're planning to be able to maybe complete the merger in October of 2023. So, you know, you've got till October next year to get out.
I don't know. I will say I've been playing around with Proxmox, and I think my home lab is going to switch over to Proxmox from VMware.
Okay.
It's pretty solid, and you can do everything you can with ESXi plus vCenter plus some.
Okay.
Including like VXLANs, EVPN, shared storage, shared distributed storage. Excuse me. Yeah, live migrations. Basically, it can do kind of everything now.
It's a full hypervisor.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Sweet.
a little
Every house
heavier.
should have one.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, I set up a little 4-node test cluster and kicked the tires a little bit, and I was pleasantly surprised. So
Cool.
I think I'm gonna start, especially since I have 70U3 on VMware, kind of completely screwed my cluster. So on VMware, so I need to rebuild anyways. Screw it. I'm just gonna rebuild the Proxmox
Yep, move on.
and probably let my VMUG Advantage lapse.
Hmm.
Which I've always held up as a model of how vendors should handle licensing for like labs and technical users. You know what?
Right.
You don't need to give it to them for free. Give it to them for stupid cheap. It's like $200 a year. And you get effectively every license that they have
Right.
in a usable capacity. I think it's 8 CPUs. Maybe it was more. I think it was like 8 sockets and 8 sockets worth of vSAN, and you get vCenter and practically everything you'd possibly want to do in a home lab.
Right.
You can do. Horizon. That's how every vendor should do that, I believe.
Right.
I
If
bet
you
you
want people to
Broadcom does not continue that.
Jeez, no. If you want people to adopt your stuff, if you want people to support your stuff, you need to give them a chance to learn it. You need to give them a chance to mess around with it, break it in an environment that doesn't cost them an arm and a leg.
Yeah, I don't have an extra 30 or 40 grand to fully license what I want to play with just for VMware.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah.
And some vendors do decent on some things. Like say Palo Alto. They basically sell you hardware at cost and licensing for the firewalls for next to nothing. They still have 85% of their portfolio that is impossible to do lab licensing on. A lab license on Panorama is like 20 grand. Fuck no.
Right.
Lost your damn mind.
Right. That you can practice on at the work site, right, Jesse?
Yeah, right.
Give me a $200 license where I can stand up, say, 8 virtual Palos and license my physical box if I want, and do Cortex XDR, and
I mean, heck,
If you're in a lab environment and it's pinned to your home, right?
yeah,
What
You're
do
not losing
you think you're
anything.
doing with it? You know?
you're going to run that really lucrative one node business out of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, which would be a
I'll be
violation
right
of your
back.
license agreement anyways.
right. Yeah.
So, no, just
Uh-oh.
you're gaining way more than you're possibly
Yeah.
losing by doing that.
Right.
And like, so I just recently finally got around to actually being able to play around with like a EVNG lab instance. And for that, just trying to get like images for Cisco and Juniper
Right,
and
yeah.
Aruba and man, they should make all those things basically, they should hand those out like candy.
Right. What are you going to do with
Cost
it?
them absolutely nothing. Yeah, they're worthless for any production use.
Right. Yeah. I gave up on all of that lab build this, that about 20 years ago when it was like you could never build the things you need to test adequately. So if you couldn't build the lab at work with real equipment and lean on it, it wasn't worth doing. It was just too expensive. And you're accusing me of being criminally, active with your shit. I don't care about your shit. You know what? I don't need it either. So
I'm trying to support and promote your shit, and you're making it more difficult for me to be able to make you sell more or make you sell more stuff. Like, don't make my job more difficult promoting you. That doesn't make any sense to either of us. I don't know. But yeah, with Broadcom, I just have a feeling things like that are going to go away. Even if they don't, the way that Broadcom cannibalizes companies, VMware is going to be a shell of itself in a couple of years anyways.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it sucks. But
I mean, if it goes through, I actually
if it goes through,
my sense is that Europe is pretty well done with Broadcom. So their requirements for them for their most recent mergers have been increasingly strict. And I think based on their bad behavior around those mergers, they're just going to be like, you know what? Sure, you can do it, but you've got to do these, 15 other completely untenable
X, Y,
things.
and Z. Yeah.
Right. Sure, you can buy VMware, but you have to divest yourself of your last 15 acquisitions.
What?
Which would be fun to see. Suddenly Symantec is back out on the market.
Yeah. I don't know. Somehow we got into a position where shareholders can and will and be successful in suing companies and specifically boards that don't do dumb things like sell themselves to Broadcom. Long term, that's a horrible idea for VMware. But it will be a short-term gain for the shareholders.
Yeah.
The only reason they can force it is because there's been a precedence.
It's a fiduciary responsibility, right?
Yeah,
this is where the market gets topsy-turvy. It's always been the case that business has a really short memory and a really foresight in business. Oh, I've planned 5 years. That's a long time from now. Amazon wins because it plans 10 years out.
Yes.
Right. And companies still are well, I've got a great 5-year plan. Sorry.
Well,
the paradigm
because
changed.
Amazon has the balls to say, no, screw you. We are planning 10 years out.
Right.
Don't be a shareholder if you don't agree to that.
Right. But when it comes to the market, their memory is way shorter. Like
Oh yeah, absolutely.
investors still, stock market investors are still looking at like, well, what's your cash on hand? Like, okay, that's a useful metric for some things, but like you can be just a crap company with a ton of cash on hand, and the market's like, buy that. Buy, whoa, look at their cash on hand. They're great. Like, no, they have nothing to sell. They have no marketing, and they're losing money every day, but they got a lot of cash on hand.
Yeah.
Um, so
Then you have some companies that have excess, like obscene amounts of cash on hand, like Apple, that are a decent company that could be putting that to way better use.
correct.
So it's like I don't know what to do with all that information.
The stock market is dumb.
It definitely can be, yes.
I mean, it has zero connection to the economy. It the rules that govern it are all about short-term or instantaneous gain, and it it plays by a completely different set of rules. It's
Well, I don't think the rules necessarily, they don't, the market action favors short-term gain. The rules don't care one way or the other. They basically just want to prevent fraud.
sure. And those two things coupled together mean that you can sue a board for not taking the Broadcom deal. Well, you could have gotten a lot of money for this.
Yeah, see, those types of lawsuits always should have gone nowhere.
The idea that short-term gain is somehow better than long-term gain, like bigger long-term gain. I mean,
And I totally understand why some investors would think that way. I don't understand why the courts would step in and enforce it with the rule of law. I can understand why the board has a fiduciary duty to do what's in the best interest of the company, but it should be in the best interest of the company, not the best interest
so
of the shareholders.
so that's the thing. The fiduciary responsibility piece comes in. You must do what's in the best interest of the owners. And that's not necessarily the best interest of the company. Like it might be in the best interest of the owners to cash the company out, close it up, quit while you're ahead.
See, the court should have the balls to just say, no, that's a stupid argument.
Sure.
I mean, there are definitely boards that have made stupid decisions. And should there be a judicial repercussions for something like that? Potentially, if it was done. See, why would they do it with malice? But like, if it was done with malice or incompetence, maybe there should be something there. But when they're doing what makes sense in the 5-year plan, and this group of investors, just because they have enough power stock wise, think that, well, quarters ended up now, I need my payday.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Right.
Well, why should those people get to dictate what the company does when everybody besides those investors can see from a mile away that is not in the best interest of that company?
Here's the thing. I don't think you get called to the carpet. I don't think you should be called to the carpet for stupidity, negligence, or even malice. I think you get called to the carpet for fraud. Like if you're Enron, you're done.
Well, yeah,
and you should go to jail.
Well, and that falls under malice.
But here's the thing. There are other, like, you know what? I don't like my investors. I'm going to drive this company into the dirt. That's malicious too, but I don't think you go to jail for that. I think as long as you aren't defrauding your investors into thinking that you have their best interests at heart, as long as you're clearly communicating that, you should be allowed to do it.
I hate you. I'm going to bankrupt you all.
I hate you. I'm going down. I'm going down and I'm taking you with me. Yep. That is a
Yeah,
valid
okay.
position.
As long as you're honest about it, sure. Because
Right.
there, it really wouldn't be fraud, I guess.
Right.
And
Fraud
as long
is
as they're
the
not
limit.
like unduly personally, benefiting from that. Say they shorted the shit out of company stock and then just intentionally
long
drove it into the ground and even said they were doing as much. Sorry, that's still fraud. I don't care what you said. Your
I mean,
actions.
that gets into insider trading. And I think that there's a place for
Oh, yeah.
insider trading, right? Like
Yeah,
insider trading
Congress.
should be incorrect as well. Like
Unless you're an
and-
elected official.
I mean, those that write history or those that write the laws, same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, Congress has played by a different set of rules for years, despite the fact that they make great pains to tell you that they play by a much more strict and honorable set of.
Sure they do. Sure they do.
I mean, that's a basic piece of fraud that should be charged right there. But let's move on.
Yeah.
How about this topic?
We're not a political show. Remote access in 2022. Did we talk about this before?
We did.
Might have.
Are VPNs still relevant for most users?
Most users, probably not. Most.
Tell us more, Brian.
So you basically have users that VPN would do them no good because they need to be on site anyways. You have, say, knowledge workers that would, in most cases, probably be better served by like a VDI type environment or some sort of hosted app kind of deal. The people that would most need VPNs these days would probably be engineers, IT people.
Mm-hmm.
People where what they need access to isn't necessarily well defined. It'll vary day to day. Whereas like knowledge workers that do need something like a VDI or hosted apps or SSL VPN, something in that realm. What they need can be enumerated. What most IT people would need, be they network systems, help desk, IT, IS, whatever the hell they do. Some of them maybe you could define, but most of them,
essentially what you're saying is the folks that have to set the clocks, make sure the phones ring, make sure the APs work, and make sure the printers print.
General admin.
Those folks, well, not just general admin, I'm talking about like core locational services, right? That require like though you can't have a cloud printer, right? The printer lives somewhere. It spits out paper in the real world.
Yeah,
right.
But even of those people, even a lot of those people probably could use a VDI. They wouldn't be
Absolutely.
They wouldn't be able to use a hosted or like a like a SSL VPN or like a well, unless it was like a general access, but like a proxied SSL kind of
Right. If you're
SSL,
using a
like the
VPN
old
solution, you have to go somewhere anyways.
yeah.
So you're going to log
But
into a tool. You know?
But if they can have
I mean-
something closer to like a VDI that's kind of a jump box where it has all their tools, it has access to everything they need, then it's kind of getting into a more that would cover almost everyone, even in IT.
Sure.
Yeah.
But let me pose a case. Like the question, are VPNs still relevant for most users? I would say yes, just not in a way that they recognize, right? Because you put a VDI out in Azure, AWS, Google, Oracle, Jim Bob's cloud service, South Tennessee, whatever it is, you still have a site-to-site tunnel.
Effectively, yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna
Maybe
manage
it's not
that
meeting
printer,
the most like old school definition of a VPN,
Right.
but it basically it's still an encrypted tunnel, be it SSL
right?
or
It is-
SSH or IPsec. Somehow it's an encrypted tunnel
It-
back to home
It's
base.
a virtual private network, right?
Yes.
So the next question that we had was, were they ever relevant in the cloud? And to be clear, we're talking about that end user focused VPN client to like centralized endpoint type of VPN.
In the cloud, much less so.
Right.
Most of
Yeah.
those, in the cloud, especially for IT, then you're getting to there's already plenty of ways to securely lock that down. Multi-factor authentication, IP restrictions. Although when you're in the cloud, that gets kind of silly and pointless. You know what? You're already MFA'd. Don't
I
get
work
stupid
for a
with
company that, full disclosure, IP restricts our access to Azure DevOps. We're fully MFA'd. But if you aren't coming from an appropriate IP, you don't get in. And like, I can hit it from a VDI because the
Now, is
VDI
that
has
for
the
all
appropriate
accounts,
IP.
or is that just for escalated accounts?
All accounts.
That's a little silly.
And so
I guess it depends on how you have stuff broken up and how people are expected to work.
So I understand it from a data exfiltration standpoint, right? Like if your company deals with sensitive data, and
If somebody
mine
really
does.
wants it, they're 100% going to get it, and there's nothing you can do about it.
True.
I'm all for the dictatorship. I think that it should be VDI for all users that have application-based or centric shit, because you can control it. You're going to be using your Office suite, that's cloud. You're going to be using, your SharePoint stuff. It could be cloud and prem. There has to be communications in between the two, but you can control who does what, how much of it they can do, and then they're restricted to it. If you're IT and you need to access something, you can go to a jump server. You can still use VDI. You can still
your
have your
VDI can be your jump
applications, but when
server.
you need to be directly connected to something like an SSH to a router, right? VPN is more preferred because you're away from all the other bullshit. It's not another VDI that happens to be sitting somewhere with 200 users dogging a pig down.
So
It has its
the
place.
main reason why I like to have a VPN is because I mostly do stuff with like Palo Alto.
Right.
I can have a VM running on my desktop or on my laptop that's running Expedition, that when my VPN is up, I can actually use Expedition to hit Panorama or boxes, and I can do stuff that I couldn't do natively. And there's no way I could do in a VM or like in a VDI.
Right.
So there's additional stuff I can do that I wouldn't be able to do in a VDI. but most people will not need that, including most
Right.
people in IT.
I say 90% of the workforce right now don't need VPN.
VDI or like hosted apps is probably
Right.
a better solution for most of them.
Yep. You can control it.
I would
and
agree.
you break it. If somebody's profile falls apart, you can move it. Right? You recreate it. You can do anything you want to it. When you got a
Yeah.
VPN to a device and the server goes down or your jump point is down, it affects a lot more. I'm selective. I'd rather do the VPN any day of the week.
Well,
You know?
and your
So-
VPN is almost an analog to the out of band management.
Yeah.
Because say you're a systems guy and the VDI infrastructure is down and you have to work remote. Well, your VPN may or may not still be up, but at least there's a chance it'll be still up, whatever catastrophe happened. So if your management of the VDI infrastructure was in the VDI infrastructure,
Right.
which, like I said, I have seen, that is a horrible problem, or that's a horrible conundrum.
Yeah, that's that carrying it a little bit too far. Once they finally realize how it works and the fact that they can push it to the cloud, then they can build a back end to it and you can talk, a little private segment back there. You know what? There's a limit to it.
Yeah, and you always need to think about what will happen when things go wrong.
Right.
What are those failure modes? What do they look like? How do you mitigate them? How do you get around those failure modes?
Mm-hmm.
You get too fancy, you're going to lock yourself out. That's fine. Maybe your primary way to manage your VDI environment is from a VDI. That's totally cool. Just don't make it so have no other way. Like intentionally lock out every other way to manage it. Because you're just asking for trouble. In fact, you're begging for trouble. You're like, please hit me with a lightning bolt.
Right.
Oh.
Preference.
So what else we got?
What else do we got?
I'm gonna remind. There we go. I added an extra F.
Extra.
Oh yeah, fancy is not your friend when failure finds your features. Friend.
Friend.
Friendo.
Friendo.
So no, we're getting close to our mark. I'm gonna do something that we haven't done. I'm gonna start an official OpsOops Origami PSA. This message goes out to all of the infrastructure people on the planet. Remember that the minute you have some free seconds, your job is to find a string and pull on it until you find the other end.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge
every free
advocate
second.
of that.
Yeah.
I think you even learned that from me.
Yeah.
I
Find
did.
a string and fucking pull on it.
Yeah. There might be
It has another end.
There might be a new job at the other end of that string, but never
There
mind.
may be, and it may not be a job you want. That is not the point. Because whether you're anywhere in the infrastructure field,
the only way
will
that
run
this
across
ends
things.
in you getting fired is if you uncover fraud and you don't broadcast it loud enough.
Correct. If for some reason you don't qualify for whistleblower protection.
Right.
Yeah. Find a string and pull on it, because you will encounter these strings all day, all night for your entire career.
Forever, yeah.
I get that you don't necessarily always have time to follow everyone when you're in the heat of things. But it's especially those ones you find when you're in the heat of things. Make a note and go back at some point in the future, unless your organization is just completely incompetent and you're so overworked and you have no time, you're understaffed and nobody has any time. If you're in that place, you know what? Take every afternoon off to polish your resume until it's done and start applying places. It's a seller's market. Get another
Yeah.
job.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, if you're in the other 90% of places that aren't that way, you're going to have some sort of,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say downtime because no one has downtime. I
You know what?
also get that. You're going to have times where it's like, man, I got a little bit of time. I'm just kind of, I'm waiting for something to come back. I'm waiting for an approval on a PO, or I'm waiting to hear back from somebody so I can move on a project. I got
Or-
15, 20 minutes to just putz.
Yeah, like he says, even if you don't, there's always those strings that bang in your face all day,
Right.
every day.
Yeah. And you
Yeah.
keep, you're
You're
waiting
like
out like
weed
like
into
cousin Nick trying to see the world.
Yeah.
No, start pulling those damn things down.
When
Yeah.
when you've hit your third week in a row at 55 to 60 hours of doing what the man has told you to do, when you hit 40 hours the fourth week, put your last 15 to 20 in to pulling on strings. Because you know
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
If they're, to Brian's point, if they're questioning your productivity for week 4 because you didn't put the 15 to 20 hours into whatever craziness they want, yeah, start polishing your resume. But
Yeah.
in general, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, you're knocking out of the park. Yeah. And you know what? This week, Friday,
No.
I'm gonna fuck
Yeah.
around, see what happens.
Yeah.
So pulling on strings is fun.
Mhm.
You block off your calendar on Fridays. Not the whole day. You might have some stuff you need to queue up for the next week. Starting at 10 o'clock until you're done on Friday, you block that entire block off. No meetings, no nothing. You shouldn't have any meetings on an afternoon and Friday anyways.
Yeah.
But
Unless you work with me, because I'm a jerk.
yeah, well, I would deny your meetings. Sorry. I love you. I'm not going to accept your meeting on 4:45, 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon.
What if the meeting is titled Scotchy Scotch Scotch Scotch?
Yeah, I will approve that faster than. So
No,
that
but
is the
seriously, like
exception.
I
Block
think the
off
thing to
time.
remember, block off time.
Half a day every week. 4 hours every week. That's a good start.
If you think about this in like from an exterior standpoint, this is effectively saving your company from having to put out bug bounties, right? Like companies have bug bounties because finding flaws is really important. So they put out a bug bounty. You're hunting bugs, man. Find them. Kill them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's your PSA, all you infrastructure and ops people. Find a string and pull on it until you find the other end.
And they're just things you're going to keep bumping into anyways.
Yeah,
You're
I know. I
making
think
your own life easier. If you ran into it once, you're going to run into it twice.
Yeah.
If you're going to run into it twice, you're going to run into it for the rest of your career until you squash it. Just squash it early.
And maybe that's the why does that like I ping that thing and it never resolves right, or like it drops a packet every 100th packet, like what, like it can be super technical, or it can be like, man, why the heck can't I get that field to show up in my alert correctly? Like, find the thing that is dumb, annoying, and wrong and chase it down.
Because it's probably dumb, annoying, and wrong for somebody else too.
Yeah.
Hopefully. If it's not, your coworkers suck, and I don't know what to tell you then. I mean,
so the corollary to that is remember that magpies untie Gordian knots. So can you. If you can't remember this one, remember this one. There you go. It turns out you can teach bees to pull on strings, by the way. Um,
I don't know. I've had some coworkers that
haven't we all? Haven't we all?
what are you gonna do?
All right, we got a couple minutes left. What else? Anything you guys want to put out there? Say, comment on, ask to cover, stock tips.
Probably our most well prepared show ever. Thank you to Chris.
Hey, you're welcome. Yeah. Well, cool. Thanks for coming on, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good show.
What do we remember to like, share, smash that
Subscribe.
subscribe button, hit that
Smash.
bell.
Yeah. Hulk smash, all the things.
Tell your friends.
Tell your enemies.
Run a
tell your
classified ad
frenemies.
in the put something in the local newspaper. I don't care.
Put in your
Maybe
Tinder profile. Put in your Grinder profile. Whatever.
Whether you're swiping left or right, make sure people know about it.
Yep. Or if you're just swiping up and down in the middle, just let people know.
Maybe do a TikTok about it. Like duet us.
Yes. That would be pretty sweet. I can't
Oh,
sing,
man.
but Chris can.
Um
Not that I don't like to do it. I'm just awful at it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there will be a next week. Assuming
Next week.
Yeah.
Elon
Probably,
and
back
Broadcom
on Monday.
blow us up.
All right.
Cool.
Yeah.
We good?
Thank you, everyone. Good show. Thanks
Good
for joining
show.
us. Whoever that one person is. And
Chimdale Lake Man. Thank you.
yeah, if that's him
Lake
that's still
Man.
on. Or
Yes.
her. I don't know. Not a biologist.
Lake Man.
However
But-
you choose to
Garbage
identify.
can.
Yes.
Yeah, that's we know who that is.
Probably.
Probably.
But thank you, Mike. Thank you, W2K.
Peace.
See you guys next week.
Yep.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep.
Bye.